Welcome to the Middle Ages, a world filled with mystery, fear, and deeply unusual beliefs. Imagine living in a time when every shadow could be a demon, when illness was caused by bad air, and when people thought bones could sing. While modern science has helped us understand the world more clearly, the people of the Middle Ages had only stories, the church, and their own observations to rely on. This led to a fascinating, and sometimes terrifying, world of superstition, ritual, and deeply rooted fear. People believed that demons could enter your home at night. They didn't just scare you. They could harm your health, even affect your dreams and desires. It was said that demonic spirits like incubi and succubi would sit on your chest as you slept, causing paralysis and terrifying visions. Sleep paralysis today has a medical explanation, but back then it was viewed as a spiritual attack. People clutched crosses, placed garlic under their pillows, and hung holy symbols over their beds to keep evil at bay. Fear didn't sleep, and neither did they. And then there were the doctors, or at least what passed for medicine at the time. If you got sick, they didn't test your blood. They let it out. Bloodletting was a common treatment for everything from headaches to fevers. It was based on the idea of balancing four humors in the body: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If your humors were unbalanced, the doctor would cut your arm or apply leeches. You might feel weaker afterward, often because you had lost a dangerous amount of blood. But this was seen as a sign the treatment was working. Superstition reached even further. Into the courtroom. Animals were tried like humans. If a pig attacked a child, it could be arrested, put on trial, and executed. Lawyers were assigned, judges delivered sentences, and townspeople gathered to witness the spectacle. It seems absurd now, but at the time, people truly believed animals could be morally guilty. The justice system didn't stop at people. It extended to anything that could cause harm, even if it walked on four legs. People turned to saints and relics in desperation. Holy bones, scraps of cloth, or drops of sacred oil were thought to hold miraculous power. Pilgrims traveled hundreds of miles just to see them, pray near them, or touch them, hoping to be healed. Entire cities fought over who owned the real skull of a saint. Some towns even claimed to have multiple versions of the same body part. But the belief was so strong, people didn't question the contradictions. Faith made the impossible feel possible. Magic wasn't just for stories. People carried charms, wore amulets, and buried witch bottles under their homes. These bottles were filled with nails, hair, and even urine, designed to trap curses or evil spirits. These protective rituals were common among all social classes. Fear of curses, envy, and unseen forces led even the educated to seek magical protection. In times of helplessness, people reached for anything that might help. Ideas about the human body were strange, especially when it came to women. It was believed that women were ruled by the moon and that menstruation was a direct result of lunar cycles. Some thought women were dangerous during a full moon. Others believed that a woman's gaze during menstruation could sour wine or kill crops. There were even claims that a woman's thoughts during pregnancy could shape the baby's soul. A dangerous idea that fueled accusations of witchcraft and moral corruption. In the darkest corners of churches, people gathered around relics and altars, not just for prayer, but to listen. Some swore they heard music, faint whispers or hymns coming from saintly bones. Religious texts describe relics that sang during Mass or glowed with divine energy. Entire congregations would fall into ecstasy, convinced they had witnessed a miracle. Whether it was collective hysteria or a true belief in divine power, these experiences left deep emotional marks on communities. Then came the plague. The Black Death swept across Europe in the 14th century, killing millions. With no understanding of bacteria, people believed the disease was caused by bad air, or miasma. To fight it, they burned herbs, carried flowers, and wore strange beaked masks filled with spices. People rang bells and lit fires to drive out the invisible evil. Entire processions marched through towns whipping themselves, begging God for forgiveness. Fear created rituals, and rituals became desperate hope. Medical myths didn't stop there. One of the strangest was the idea of the wandering womb. Doctors believed that if a woman didn't have enough sex or children, her womb could move around her body, causing suffocation, seizures, or madness. Treatments included sweet-smelling herbs placed near the lower body and foul-smelling ones near the nose to coax the womb back to its place. It may sound ridiculous now, but these ideas shaped real medical practice for centuries. There was another widespread fear that shaped countless lives: the fear of witches. In the medieval imagination, a witch was not just a woman with knowledge of herbs or healing. She was a servant of the devil, capable of casting spells, cursing crops, or stealing newborns through demonic power. Entire villages could be thrown into panic if a child got sick or a storm destroyed a harvest. People looked for someone to blame, and too often that was a poor, elderly woman living alone at the edge of town. Accusations were often based on superstition, personal grudges, or even jealousy. If someone saw a cat near your home and your cow died the next day, that could be enough to condemn you. If your bread rose too quickly or too slowly, or your neighbor's wine turned sour, someone might whisper your name. The result? Trials, interrogations, in many cases torture. And these beliefs weren't just limited to isolated villages. Even educated leaders, church officials, and kings supported laws against witchcraft. Some even wrote entire books detailing how to identify and destroy witches. In many parts of Europe, this fear evolved into full-blown witch hunts that lasted for centuries. But beliefs weren't only driven by fear. They were also shaped by wonder. The natural world was full of signs and omens. A blood moon, a solar eclipse, or a sudden illness in the village. These events weren't random. They were viewed as messages from God or the universe. People would interpret the flight of birds, the shape of clouds, or the behavior of animals to predict the future. Divination was not just a fringe activity. It was a tool for understanding life. Even kings and nobles consulted astrologers before making major decisions. The position of the stars and planets could determine when to marry, when to go to war, or when to conceive a child. Astrology was deeply respected, blending both mysticism and what people thought of as science. People also believed in creatures that today we would call mythical. Dragons, unicorns, and sea monsters weren't just fairy tales. They were part of natural history. Medieval bestiaries, illustrated books of animals, listed lions next to griffins, elephants next to phoenixes. Travelers' tales fueled the imagination. If a sailor returned and described a giant serpent in the sea, people believed it. And why not? The world beyond their village was unknown and full of danger. The further you traveled, the stranger the stories became. Some believed in lands where people had dog heads, or where giants roamed free. These weren't just tales, they were widely accepted as truth. Then there were beliefs tied to morality and the afterlife. Hell was not just a concept, it was a very real place described in terrifying detail. Preachers spoke of lakes of fire, demons with iron claws, and eternal torment for sins as simple as working on a Sunday or questioning a priest. Children were taught these images from a young age. Paintings and stained glass in churches depicted horrifying visions of hell to remind the faithful what awaited them if they strayed. On the other hand, Heaven was a place of unimaginable beauty and peace. Saints, angels, golden streets, eternal rest. And between these two places stood purgatory, a place for souls to be cleansed before entering heaven. This belief led to another strange practice: paying for prayers. People paid the church to say prayers for their dead loved ones, hoping it would help them ascend faster to heaven. The richer you were, the more prayers you could afford. This belief system tied salvation not only to faith, but to wealth, a concept that would later spark major reform movements. Funeral rituals, too, were loaded with superstition. Bells were rung during funerals not just for mourning, but to ward off evil spirits. Bodies were buried with specific objects, crosses, coins, even tools to help the dead in the afterlife. Some graves were dug with stones placed over the body to keep it from rising again. Because yes, people believed the dead could return. The idea of the restless dead was deeply rooted in medieval folklore. Ghosts, revenants, and walking corpses were all part of the belief system. If someone died suddenly or under mysterious circumstances and strange events followed, like livestock dying or children falling ill, the community might dig up the corpse to inspect it. In some cases, the body was burned or decapitated just to be safe. People also feared that knowledge itself could be dangerous. Books, especially those not written by the church, were sometimes viewed with suspicion. Knowledge of herbs, astronomy, or philosophy, if not approved by religious authorities, could get you labeled a heretic. Some thinkers were executed or silenced for presenting ideas that challenged traditional beliefs. And yet, curiosity never truly died. In monasteries, scholars copied texts by hand, preserving ancient wisdom. They studied the stars, experimented with plants, and explored the limits of what was allowed. There was a constant tension between belief and curiosity, between fear and discovery. What all of this reveals is a complex, deeply human world, one not defined just by ignorance, but by creativity, tradition, fear, hope, and a desire to understand. Medieval people didn't just accept the unknown, they gave it shape. They filled the darkness with stories, symbols, and rituals to bring order to chaos. While many of their beliefs seem strange to us now, they remind us how far we've come, and how much we still search for answers in a world that remains mysterious in its own ways. And so, as we leave behind the myths, the demons, the bleeding, and the bone-rattling beliefs of the Middle Ages, we're reminded of something bigger than just bizarre ideas. We're reminded that history is human. Every strange custom, every dark superstition, every forgotten ritual, these were real people, trying to survive in a world they didn't fully understand. They searched for meaning in the stars, protection in charms, and healing in relics. And even when they were wrong by today's standards, their efforts came from the same place ours do now: a need for control, for comfort, for hope. The Middle Ages may seem distant, even alien to us now, but if you look closely, you'll see familiar fears, familiar questions, and maybe even a few familiar mistakes. Because while science moves forward, human nature doesn't always change as quickly. If you found this journey through the bizarre and fascinating world of medieval beliefs interesting, don't forget to tap that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to see more hidden stories from the past, hit that follow button or subscribe, and join us as we explore the strange, the dark, and the unforgettable sides of history. Thanks for watching, and then remember, stay curious, question everything, and never stop exploring.